Hey everyone, welcome back to Two Spot Monkeys Live. You are joining us here in episode 42. In episode 42. For episode 42? Well, you're here for it and you're in it. Jim, how are you?
I am good. We have almost hit my age with these episodes. Um, I don't. I think that's a good thing.
In my mind, I keep thinking of episode 52, which is 10 away. And I feel like that would mean like we've done this for a year. I know that'll be past a year because again, we've had life just unfurl before our eyes and we haven't been consistent week to week. So that to me is like the major milestone. But yeah, age is a good one too.
When you said you were thinking of 52, I was going to say, Tom, neither of us are 52, my friend.
No.
These we may feel like it, but
we have a while to go. So yeah, awesome. Well, it's great to be back this week. First and foremost, I've been reflecting a little bit in the last week on last week's episode, and thank you to those who listened. Thank you for those that stuck around. Either you enjoyed the content or you just were like, when is this ever going to end? Either way, we appreciate you. And this week, we will not be that long in the tooth. We have a lot less to talk about, but a lot of good topics. So we are going to dive right in today, and we are going to talk about the kind of the major North American story of the week, and that's AEW Blood and Guts, which happened on Wednesday night, emanating from Daly's Place in Jacksonville. AEW had a whole show, and I thought it was a really well-structured show. We talked a little bit briefly last week that they had added matches, and you know, there was talk at that one point that Blood and Guts was going to be a one-match show. I think we saw that wouldn't have been the case.
However, live, it was a one-match show.
Okay, tell me more. I'm not.
Read online last night. They taped the first hour. The report I read said several weeks ago. I don't know how long. I mean, they still had to do the 2-ring setup for the first hour, so I don't know how many weeks ago. But live, the fans that were there on Wednesday night, I almost said last night, which is not true. It's Friday morning. Only got Blood and Guts.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and they said as they sold tickets, they had been very upfront about that. And when they announced tickets were going on sale, they said a one-match event, which you and I had picked up on, and then thought the whole show would be one match. You know, and that was the conversation last week. But yeah, apparently live, it was a one match. They showed the first hour on the screen, and the reactions we heard were actually the live crowd reacting to the screen, which is interesting. There apparently were a couple of people that were mad about it, and they offered anybody who didn't understand that a refund. I would assume they had to take it before Blood and Guts started. And they said 5 people took the refund. So apparently it wasn't a major issue for those live. So I'm not quite sure why they did that, except for perhaps the timing. So, you know, they could edit that first hour and get it in the hour and then make sure they left the second hour and not overrun.
Well, and that massive cage, I mean, good grief. I felt like it got set up really quickly when I was watching. So that what you're sharing makes a lot of sense. And
there's a reason now that you say that.
Yeah, I mean, I gave them credit for working efficiently, but you know, there's also let's not forget we had a huge gimmick explosion match that kind of was, for lack of a better term, a fart in church. So timing on AEW's end and delivery on gimmicks, it's better to be safe than sorry, and so they probably did that here.
And were they? We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I want to dive right in because I actually have high praise for this match, and it was crazy violent. Did you notice when you watched the episode this week that there was a lot of those bumpers about, you know, this, you know, show contains violent content, you know, viewer discretion advised, and that was the first time I'd ever recalled that happening for an AEW show, and clearly the main event in this match. You know, led up or met that name or met that billing, if you will. I thought it was really a solid match. I thought it was incredibly violent. The guys that bled, which were there were a lot of them. And in this type of match, whether you think that bleeding in the ring is good or not good, it added to the drama. You know, you think of, you know, I think of those poor FTR guys. Good grief, I don't know how much blood they lost, but they're in the vein of like the 1988, tag team wars in the South, even though I think that they're far more dynamic than that now. But you would imagine that those would be the guys that would, almost like an homage to the past. But yeah, so many things to talk about. And I feel like it ended. I know that we had discussed it a lot before, that we thought, wow, this is really early. It feels premature to get to this type of match. In the aftermath, the way it ended, neither team lost anything, in my opinion. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I've been hogging the mic this morning.
You're good. You're good. So yeah, I thought. Let me back up from the match for a minute and just talk first hour just for a quick second. A little surprised that we got more of Cody and QT than I thought we were going to get. I thought that was going to be more Angle. Certainly it was Angle. I saw that somebody yesterday put a story online, and I read just a little bit of it, and then I saw it got an awful lot of backlash on Twitter as well. And after I read a little bit of it, I stopped reading it, to be perfectly honest. Just blasting Cody for their stance was that he was always putting himself in, big moments and all of those kinds of things. And the only reason that QT has a job is because he's friends with Cody and blah, blah, blah. I thought Cody and QT had a good match. I have cared more about QT Marshall in the last month than I have ever cared about QT Marshall. I think QT Marshall has done great character work. He reminds me a lot, and he's always kind of wanted to be an old school heel. You can kind of tell that, even through his work in Ring of Honor. And that's what he reminded me of. Is he a 5-star Kenny Omega in the ring? No, but most people aren't. And most people aren't going to be. He's not bad in the ring by any means. He's fundamentally good. And now his character is at a point where you're like, man, I want to see that guy get his butt kicked. Like, he's come off as this, almost, so I saw one comparison to The Sopranos. He's this like mafia don almost, kind of, with bad bowling shirts, which is kind of funny, I think. But he is, and I think his promos and his character work have been awesome. I think, no shock that they ended it after the finish with a Go-Go coming in and hitting the punch, because obviously they see a lot in a Go-Go. There's no question there. He's kind of the guy that they're using, I think, the factory to build more than QT. So that's, that made total sense to me. I wouldn't be shocked if the announcement next week is Cody and a Go-Go at Double or Nothing, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. So I thought that was really good. Britt Baker was fine. It was what it should be to continue to build her. I thought the 4-way tag was pretty good, even if I thought the winner was completely obvious the entire time. You got 4 good tag teams.
Yeah, that was a good tag, and I wondered if they were going to do something fluky, like. And the one thing that we've pretty much seen consistently, and that pretty much might be actually the wrong terminology to apply there, is that AEW really sticks to their guns when it comes to stipulations and or angles. Like when they say a team is going to, break up if they lose, or if Cody will never challenge for the AEW World Title ever again, among other things that have transpired. I thought they could have gotten away from not having SCU win, but not having them take the loss, and that being kind of like the backdoor way. I don't have a problem with how it played out. It makes me like, now I've been kind of simmering on this storyline, but I've also been paying attention as well. So when I think of next week and what is building, what has been developing as a stacked AEW card.
Holy smokes, talking about
yeah, right. Like, I mean, that's you got, if you're following the product and you're invested in the brand, you've got a lot of reasons to tune in. So,
yeah, and kudos to them to follow up. Obviously, a huge show with Blood and Guts with another stacked lineup, because we've seen, and granted, next week's live again, so maybe that helps, because we've seen sometimes those tape shows just feel a little less than some of the live shows. And again, next week is live, so maybe it's not shocking. But to have 2, and they've had a run of good shows here leading up to Blood and Guts. We kind of talked about that last week, but to have 2 really stacked shows back to back like that, I mean, they're and they got a pay-per-view to build to, which I'm almost afraid might get overshadowed by how good Dynamites have been. Yeah, that's interesting. So I thought the first hour was good. The one thing I'm interested to see how it plays out is you have Darby Allin feuding with Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. Nice little dig at Evolve there by Ethan Page in his promo, without saying the word Evolve. And we know that I think I remember anyways that split wasn't necessarily uh, totally amicable. They didn't leave on the best terms. Ethan Page seems to have a pattern of that, I might say. But anyways, that could be a story for another time, because he didn't seem happy with Impact when he left there either. But so who's going to get the shot? And does that lead? I hope it doesn't lead to any sort of tension between Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky already, because they're just building those two as a unit. It's just interesting to have two people feuding with a singles champion that are a team.
But I think they're feuding with Sting too. I really do.
True.
So again, Miro's getting the shot at Darby next week. Can Darby even perform, or do we get Darby losing the title without losing the title in the ring, and Miro becomes the face of TNT by becoming the champion? Again, so much going on. Obviously, we're getting you haven't even shared your thoughts on Blood and Guts yet, and we're talking about next week. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a very true statement. We could easily see Miro win the title next week, and then Darby and Sting go off. I don't know that Darby needs to be the TNT champion right now. I think Darby's over enough. We'll see.
If they go that direction, I want to call back to it was the week before Blood and Guts, when Darby defeated. Was it 10? Was it 10? I believe it was 10. Yeah. He either equaled or surpassed the number of defenses like that a TNT champion had at that point. And then he had I wasn't a murderer's row, but it was like 5 consecutive weeks of like really solid challengers and matches. So, when you think of the footnotes that mark a champion's reign, he could do more by all means. Yet I could definitely see the title transitioning now. And they've been talking, and the opinion out there was for so long. You've got Miro, formerly Rusev, who's got all this talent in the world, and he kind of slowly was on this AEW journey, and he's finally, I think, turning the corner. And Tony Khan had gone on record and saying that he had high hopes, and the other thing about AEW, it's a slow burn, man. You got to sometimes things happen quickly, which we've talked about here, but sometimes it's a slow burn.
Absolutely, they do both. Absolutely, they do both, and sometimes they do the slow burn very well too. They've planted seeds along the way for a lot of things. So Blood and Guts. Let me talk about that match. I thought the match was phenomenal. I thought Santana is going to be a star on his own someday. I think when he breaks away, I will still say that LAX has not been used to the best of their potential in AEW, or Proud and Powerful. Sorry, go back to old school names. I just don't think in the tag division, especially, they haven't been used to their full potential at all. And AEW's tag division could be a whole nother topic that we could talk about sometime, because I feel like that's true of a number of tag teams. But I digress. Santana, I thought, like he really stood out to me. Sammy Guevara also really stood out to me. Sammy Guevara is somebody who, there have been a lot of people that have been super high on Sammy for years. I haven't been one of them. He just hasn't clicked for me. He clicked for me on Wednesday night. I thought he was great.
And I've come around on him a little bit quicker than you, but I will share that opinion of it took a while. Like I remember Sammy Guevara, and we've talked about, how much and how actively I was watching PWG on a pretty regular basis up until I think about 2019, late 2018, give or take. Every DVD that had come out, I was watching and purchasing. But Sammy Guevara just wasn't doing a lot for me in the spot he was put in PWG. And when AEW had signed him, and he was part of that first kind of, when they launched and it was all kind of a new brand and new talent, I was like, okay, this guy, and I wouldn't say that now. I laugh at myself thinking back to when they launched and where we are today.
Am I remembering right, or was it M-Dog? Who did MJF face in the opener of All In, which I realize isn't technically an AEW still? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't remember.
Might have been M-Dog now that I say that. I was thinking it was Guevara. But anyways, Now that I say it, I think it might have been Matt Cross. Anyways, neither here nor there. He's been around since the inception, definitely. And I thought he looked great. I loved how they finished the match. I thought there was a real chance Sammy Guevara was going to turn and go to the Pinnacle. And that didn't happen. I was very happy for that. And in fact, even the week before when he said, "Oh, I'll go in first, I'll do," and he just seemed a little too eager. And so I was like, okay. And even at the finish, when he said, "Don't do it," to MJF, as MJF was threatening to throw Jericho off the top, I half expected him to go, "You know what? Yeah, throw him," or something like that. And that didn't happen. So I was glad to see that, because I do think that, and we've talked about this, like with the Young Bucks especially, I think the one thing AEW, maybe one of the things AEW could be faulted on, is they do a little too much turn. And I'm just ready to simmer on that for a little bit. And I wasn't ready for Sammy to turn heel, partially because I think Sammy, he's getting over with the crowd. Whether I was clicking with him or not, the crowd likes him. And I think right now he probably is better off as a babyface. So I was glad to see him stay in that role. And then there's the ending. I think it was obvious he was going to get pushed off. Jericho was going to get pushed off. I thought it was interesting that when they went to the wide shot to kind of show it happen, that spot where he landed, I don't think had been shown on camera basically the entire evening. It looked different to me. And I know it was the end of the ramp and the guys weren't walking on it, if you remember, because they'd have fallen right through the dumb thing. So were going down the stairs, on either side, which is interesting when you realize, like, yeah, because some of those guys would have worked in that ring that was directly at the end of the ramp. So if you were working in that ring, why wouldn't you walk straight onto the ramp? And, but I didn't think about that while it was happening. So kudos to them for not making a big deal out of it. I just thought it looked bad, the landing. It was obviously crash pad, which obviously you have to do. You can't throw anybody onto concrete. I get it. But even the steel grating was pretty obviously cardboard that he went through. And it just, I think the close-up of it, WWE sometimes when they do these stunts like this, they crash through and go through something. And then they, so you see your first view is they're gone. And then they come over them. And sometimes they're able to pull some of that, padding really fast out. So it looks a little more devastating when they shoot it on TV. We all know there's a crash pad there. Like I said, you're not throwing somebody onto concrete unless you're Mick Foley. And you're not doing that in 2021 anymore. I don't know. It took me out of it a little bit. And honestly, Jericho opening his eyes and talking to the ref took me out of it too. And just lay there and don't move, Chris. And, utter yes or something when they say, "Are you okay?" Because they're going to check on him. And, well, they should. But I'm like, he just threw you off the top of a cage. Now, granted, I say that, and I realized that in 1997 we threw a man off a cage and he got up and he went back on top of the cage. So
only to be chokeslammed through the cage.
Only to be chokeslammed through the cage and still get back up. There comes a point where you're like, are you going to shoot him? That's how we're going to end this match, because what are you doing? So at least this wasn't like, oh, and Jericho got up and still won the match or something. That would have been ridiculous. They didn't do that. But I just feel like AEW is struggling with these big stunt things and executing them well. And the problem is if it takes you out of it, and I've read a few other folks in our group of friends who've made similar comments, when that ending takes you out of it, it can undo all of the good that not undo, but put a little bit of a damper on all of the good that's happened in the match up until then. You look at the exploding barbed wire death match, Moxley and Omega had a really strong match up until sparklers went off, and and it was terrible at the end. This wasn't at that level. I'm not going to say it was as bad as that in any way, but it still, for me, took me out of it a little bit. And I was like, oh, this was such a good match, and I loved the way they finished it. And then they did this stunt that, for me, just kind of went, okay.
Yeah, so those cardboard kind of like steel grate kind of things, like that was unnecessary. After, you can say that after the fact. I agree with you. Like, that looked really really bad from the angle that we got to see it on TV from.
And maybe that's part of it too, is learning how to shoot it better for them.
Right. And that's, I don't know if I've made this comment here before. I feel like I have. AEW with camera work has always left a little something to be desired at times.
Yeah.
And that was on display. That's a critique I'll have of this match in certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
So hypothetical, what if I love, let's just talk that finish. Sammy being the one to give up the match for the team to save Jericho, his partner, makes perfect sense. And again, I think it keeps the bad guys strong. It doesn't hurt the baby faces. And then clearly the bad guys get way more heat, specifically MJF, by doing what he did. If that had happened and they fade to black pretty immediately, does it change your opinion? Do you think you feel differently today?
Probably. Okay. And I think there was a camera shot, and I think it was just a fan, videoing, that was shot from back a ways. And so it looked, you got the height of the fall. And it's not like Jericho jumped, and he shouldn't have. I mean, his job was to fall straight back, nesty plunge basically. And he did a nice, safe job of that. And kudos to him. Look, he's 50 some years old. A man like that doesn't need to be, and he's made more money than you and I will make in 3 lifetimes combined. Man like that doesn't have to do bumps like that if he doesn't want to. And so kudos to Jericho for doing it. But when it was shot from back a ways and you got the height and the impact, it looked a little better. I think the problem was, in my mind, my memory is they were shooting it like almost from next to the landing spot. So you kind of saw it all poof. And I think, so again, it's camera work. Shoot it from a way that you don't notice that first. Then as you show him laying there, again, we all realize there's a crash pad under there. I just don't want to see it, if that makes sense. Like, that's this thing with special effects, right? You're supposed to be able to do something that looks like something it's not really. And I think the problem was we saw the not really. Pro wrestling is that. Let's be honest. You always see people comment when somebody whiffs on a strike and it's caught on camera really well. I've shared the story with you that the first thing I saw at the very first live event I ever went to was Tito Santana and Kamala were already in the ring as we got there. And as we're walking down the stairs to our seats, Tito Santana slapped Kamala and missed him by 1.5 feet. And Kamala sold it like he got hit with a brick. And I understand that's pro wrestling and you're shooting it from 4 sides. You're going to, all of those kinds of things. There wasn't anything Tito and Kamala could do about that, because I'm sure to the people who were on the sides behind Tito and Kamala, it probably looked like he whacked the crap out of him. Happened to be my angle. I saw it. That's fine in a live event. You're going to have people who see that kind of stuff because you got people all the way around the ring. When you're shooting it, you get to pick the angle, though. So pick the right angles. And they have good, like Keith Mitchell, I know, is there, and some other people who, they've worked for WWE for years. It's not like they don't know what they're doing. I don't know. I wish that could have not taken me out of it, because the match itself was so good. I totally agree with you. The ending shot of MJF with blood on his face and just looking like, I'm the man, I have taken this thing over. I thought it was great. And I agree with you. The way they finished, you can't say, oh, why did they have Sammy tap out? He's going to be a future world champion. Or why did they have, I don't know, fill in the blank here, Proud and Powerful tap out? If anybody would have said, why did they have Jericho tap out if he tapped? Jericho's Teflon, right? He's going to be fine. But they didn't have to do that. They found a creative way to do it. And it also keeps this issue going, which you and I both talked about last week, being too soon to blow it off. And yeah, this thing is not done.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thought I wanted to share, and I'm interested in how you perceived it too, was just the cage. I thought it looked great, but I was also very concerned. And really it was Santana Ortiz that really put a spotlight on this. The way that it was not secured to the ring. They took some pretty hard falls where they fell through kind of where the ring frame and the cage met. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see me trying to make that image with my hands. clearly, I don't think Blood and Guts is a one and done. I think this is an angle that is going to be wrong term, match that is forever part of the AEW lexicon from here forward. Pausing there, loving that the commentators were pretty much calling it War Games without calling it War Games.
I love that the Jim Ross and Tony were saying, and you and I called the first Blood and Guts match, Tony. I'm like, yeah, you're about to, but you didn't do it in 1986 or whatever it was.
Yeah, they're like Dusty Rhodes created this match back in '87, and again, you and I have enough history with our pro wrestling fandom and knowledge that we can kind of like smile at that. But if you're brand new to AEW and pro wrestling in general, like if this is what got you in
1987 Blood and Guts match, you're not going to get anything.
Right, you're probably getting some campy horror movie. But yeah, so thoughts on the cage that you had? Did you see that as well? And
I thought it looked cool. I liked the top. I love that they went back to a top on it. You know, the classic War Games, like instead of NXT has gone without the top. I thought that was cool. So it added all of those kinds of things and added what they were able to do with the finish. So I love that. I do agree that the sides didn't seem to be quite secured right. Hager at one point got put out on the side and was leaning against it. And I thought he was going to go through it. And I was like, ooh, geez. So, those are just, and I know, we're on a podcast, so we're going to nitpick, right? That's what we do. But they're little things. They're just little execution things. All in all, B+A show.
Does Blood and Guts, the match, fall in your top 5 matches of the year?
Of what I've seen, probably. Now, I have to say I have not seen very little, in fact, New Japan after Wrestle Kingdom. And I know that there are some matches there that I've missed, including, from what I've heard, the Ospreay Shingo match from earlier in the week, that probably would definitely be on my list if I had seen them. Blood and Guts probably would be up there. I've always enjoyed, I love the War Games. Have always loved the War Games concept, or Blood and Guts, whatever they need. And I understand WWE owns the trademark, so they can't.
Classic Blood and Guts.
Great. If you want to see the early Blood and Guts matches, check out Peacock. They got them, we hope, maybe, kind of. They've got a lot more up on Peacock. They've done a good job of getting a lot of things added as quickly as they can. I know they're not quite where the network was yet, but they'll get there. But yeah, check out classic Blood and Guts matches. Maybe that'll be one of the carousel options, classic Blood and Guts matches. But anyways, I thought the match as a whole was good. So I don't have a top 5 list. That's one thing I've always been terrible at trying to keep. I am tracking how many matches I watch. You and I are both doing that. And I need to update it a little bit, especially here as May has begun. But I don't normally track my top matches of the year, and it's always something I've intended to do. And then by May, I'm like, okay, too late.
Well, that's like saying you want to rank your meals of the week. Like,
right. What did I have on Monday? Yeah, it's. I need to start it from January 1, but it probably would. It would be close if it wasn't. How about for you? I know you do track your matches of the year.
Yeah, I'm still processing, so that's why I wanted to hear how. I thought it was fantastic. It's definitely one of the best matches I've seen this year. It's definitely not the work rate match, even though there was some tremendous work rate there. The guys were working so hard and so the violence when Cash came in that match, I thought he was shooting on people. He was coming when you talk about a house of fire. I was like, whoa, who stole his lunch money?
Well, and I loved the Proud and Powerful and Sammy double spike pile driver on the exposed wood. I mean, that's just old school, right? And it's a great callback, or a great, callback's not the right word, but Tully's been doing that with FTR. So they got one up and were able to do it to FTR, which I thought was pretty cool.
The only other thing that I think I'll say, even though I know we do a whole show just on this match, it was actually funny when I started to watch it. I was able to be spoiler free, and I watched it yesterday, the night after it happened. I watched everything on Wednesday through the tag match, but then I had slept really poorly on Tuesday night, and I said, if I sit here and watch this match with about 40 minutes plus to go, there's a chance I'll doze off. And I go, and I can't risk that at all. I want my full attention on this match. I was spoiler free, and as I watched, I said, man, maybe I should reach out to Jim, and I know you were watching on demand as well. Let's just do a watch along episode, and that's all we'll do. And I thought, how cool is that? But how difficult is that? And then it would put us on the spot. How funny for two spot monkeys being put on the spot.
Right. Something we haven't done, so you never know. It could happen someday.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure it's going to be up there for me in terms of top matches of the year. Where it's falling, I don't know just yet. And to your comment, I took a day off. I took a mental health day off of work this week, partially because I needed it, partially because I was like, I'm going to binge watch New Japan. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, I spent all day watching New Japan and got to the point where I'm ready to watch Shingo and Will Ospreay, which I have no idea of the outcome, but that's where I am. And I knew that match based on kind of the timestamp on New Japan World, that I didn't have enough time to sit there and be fully locked in. And I've not come back around to that since that time. Perhaps today, again, I've got a kid in driver's ed this week who started, and I got 2 kids in sports. So if you ask me what day it is, sometimes I probably won't even know.
and without going into it here, because we've got another number of other things. I don't know, Tom, did you see the news this morning about New Japan? They have postponed the Wrestle Grand Slam events.
I have not, no. So I was aware. I saw the little blurb on, was it Tuesday morning, about the potential, like the fever or the symptoms of the talent, and that some people were being removed. I didn't know who was removed until I started to watch day 2, or night 2, if you will. And then I saw that there were 2 positive tests that came out of that. So
they have not announced who those are. Obviously, they won't. I don't know if HIPAA's a thing in Japan, but out of respect to them, let those people decide if they want to announce that it's them.
And with those match or that event being postponed, that was the one that was at the end of May, correct?
Both of them here at the end of May, because there was supposed to be one, I want to say next week or the week after, without looking at the schedule, and then the last Tokyo Dome one, I believe, was in the end of the month. So
and again, we're not in this speculation business, but one has to wonder if one of those talents is Okada, because he was in arguably the biggest match. He was going to challenge the winner of Ospreay Shingo.
Right. And I think also the state of emergency in Japan, is in Tokyo especially, has been extended until the end of May as well. And I think that probably played as well. So bummer for New Japan. But hey, safety first. For fans and talents. So, and best thoughts to whoever those 2 talents are that got sick, and hopefully the others who were nearby them that were also pulled from that card, are able to recover well and don't get sick, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope it's not a spread type thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and transitioning from Blood and Guts, even in that same night of AEW this week, when they started to promote Double or Nothing, I'm like, that's not coming up. It's May, like we talked about. It's May. Like where like, again, we've had a staggered recording schedule and content schedule, but it is actually May, and that's a traditional May event. So it's literally right around the corner.
It is. In fact, when they first announced the Shida Baker match for Double or Nothing, I thought, wow, they're really putting that out there early.
I felt the same way. I totally did.
And then all of a sudden was like, well, actually, wait a minute. It's like 3 or 4 weeks. Like, this is when they should be starting to build to Double or Nothing. So Shida Baker makes a ton of sense to me for Double or Nothing. They've certainly been building Baker to that. I'm glad that it's happening at the pay-per-view and not just on Dynamite. Nothing against the matches they build to on Dynamite. I think they do a really nice job of making matches on Dynamite not just be billed. And when you don't have pay-per-views every month, you can do that. And I like that personally, especially if you're going to charge $50 for your pay-per-views. And we've had that conversation before. You can't go monthly at $50. I don't think you can. And I think they realize they can't, so they don't. So, Shida and Baker, and then they come out.
This is what I was waiting for. This is why I wanted to talk about this today.
They come out and they said they were going to have, excuse me, the announcement of Kenny Omega's opponent at Double or Nothing. And from the way the initial, the opening tag match ended on Dynamite on Wednesday night, where they were just beating the tar out of Eddie Kingston. I mean, it's got to be Eddie Kingston, right? Kenny Omega versus Eddie Kingston for the title at Double or Nothing. Like, that's what it's going to be. Or, now, I'm not saying they can't do something next week to still get to Eddie Kingston. That may happen. But it seemed so like this is what you should do storyline-wise. And I stopped myself from saying so obvious because sometimes you don't want to do the obvious. But sometimes the obvious is the right choice. And it seemed like Kingston was the right move. You don't want to go back to Moxley probably right away. This wouldn't be right away. He won the title in December. It's 5 months later. But
they had their big rematch.
I was going to say Moxley had a rematch.
Yeah.
So go to Kingston. Makes sense. Makes total sense in the story. But nope, we're going to have an eliminator match next week between the top 2 ranked people who I have to admit, I would have to go back and look and see what singles matches Pac has won that got him to number 1. Is he number 1 or is Orange number 1? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Either way,
unfortunately.
And frankly, the Orange as well. I don't feel like he's had a ton of singles matches lately. Like, so it's really weird that they're the top 2 contenders. I like them both. And don't get me wrong, if you're going to give me Pac versus Kenny Omega on pay-per-view, there's no good storyline reason for me to give a rip, but in ring, that would kill. That would be great. And I'm sure Orange Cassidy and Omega would be interesting, although my fear there. So here, I don't want to go too far off on a side tangent, but like we never do that, right? To me, there are 2 Kenny Omegas in AEW right now. There's Kenny Omega in the ring, who's pretty darn close to being the best bout machine guy again. I mean, I've loved most everything in the ring for the last 6 months to a year. I mean, I think the guy's just been clicking where he wasn't maybe at the beginning of AEW. It was just something seemed to be missing. I think he's on all cylinders in the ring right now. Would be in the conversation for best in-ring guy in the world right now, in my opinion. And then there's the character side of Kenny Omega. And I saw somebody on Twitter, Facebook, somewhere, make the comparison, and it didn't click with me because I'm not really big into this world, but I've seen enough of it to understand it, that he's playing a Japanese anime villain character. And I'm not a big anime guy, but he's playing this over-the-top, goofy villain. But then he gets in the ring, and hey, he's awesome. So my fear with Omega and Cassidy, if they go that route, is it could get really hokey before they have a pretty good match in the ring. Because Cassidy's kind of a comedy character in his character stuff as well. We know he can go in the ring. We've seen that. I don't know. This, for Double or Nothing, which to me feels like they're number 1 or 2, All Out, being the other one. Double or Nothing, though, is their debut, so I think there's always just a little something special about that show. I don't know. This just made me go, oh, okay.
Yeah, if All Out is their WrestleMania and then Double or Nothing is their SummerSlam, to try to give you a WWE comparison.
Or I feel like Rumble's number 2, but I get your comparison. Yeah. How did you react when you saw that play out, Tom?
So 2 thoughts. One, I thought it was interesting, especially now knowing that they had taped this. They had taped Blood and Guts solely on, or Blood and Guts was live, and they had taped the first hour previous. So both those promos, were those promos also then taped, or were those live? Because they were right in front of the setup cage, right? So that's a wondering that
those might have been live, and my thought is that's why it made more sense after I read that, why Omega came out and said, "Are you guys ready for Blood?" Like he was pumping up the crowd, which if the crowd hadn't seen anything live, okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
And I thought that was just being Kenny Omega being swarming over the top. But you might be very correct.
But dual purpose, because it is odd to have your heel be the one to go out and do that. You would think Mox or somebody would go out and get them pumped up.
Yeah,
Or Jericho.
I thought having 2 promos back to back before that match was an interesting choice. They both built to things that I want to see next week now. I think you and I both, but maybe more so me, I had Adam Page pegged for this spot. I thought way back when coming back.
That might be All Out. Like, I feel like maybe that, although let's be honest, since the beginning of AEW, you and I have both been saying, I think that might be the next pay-per-view. Like,
right.
We just keep pushing Page back, like, because they don't quite commit to him. Like, it seems like they're gonna, and then they don't quite. And then it seems like they're gonna, and then they don't quite.
Yeah, I know. And then Adam Page loses to Brian Cage a week ago to continue the Team Taz feud. So go figure. Again, no problem there. It's part of storytelling. I digress. That's not where we're going to park. If you would have said to me, "Hey, the Double or Nothing AEW World Title match is going to be Omega versus Pac or Omega versus Orange Cassidy," if you had said that to me 3 months ago, I'd be like, "Okay, whatever." Because I agree with you. I think it makes a lot of sense that it be Eddie Kingston. I don't know how you get Eddie Kingston there, outside of it being like a grudge, because they are pretty much trying to honor the rankings, and which I appreciate and I respect that. But you can book however you want to book. You can make you can put whoever you want in a spot.
So,
yeah, precisely. That being said, it makes me think we're getting the Young Bucks versus Moxley and Kingston for the tag titles or something of that ilk. Which is cool too. So,
yeah. So you don't think SCU's winning the tag titles? What you're saying? I'm kidding.
No. But you're right, because that's the thing. I could definitely see them, and so maybe it's not. Maybe it's a grudge match. Maybe it's Bucks versus Mox and Kingston, and it's a street fight.
I hope they don't put the belts back on Daniels and Kazarian. I got to be honest.
I don't either, but I feel like it might be like.
I guess it was Kazarian and Scorpio, really, but
right. And it might, in a way, you could say, okay, well, that's the Lifetime Achievement Award for Christopher Daniels before he sunsets his career. Not that I'm always in favor of those things, but
right. He got his Ring of Honor World Title win. I'll let him have that. And I realize Ring of Honor World Title versus AEW, as far as exposure in the world, definitely not the same thing. To you and I, it might mean more, and to some of our friends, but. Yeah. Anyways, but no, that would make sense, since they're not, unless they get to Kingston somehow. But to your point, the rankings are work. You and I both don't quite understand how Pac and Cassidy are 1 and 2, anyways. I think
that's where you go back. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say with Baker, they've done such a nice job of her talking about trying to get to the top. So she's going to work all 3 shows, Elevation, Dark, and Dynamite, win matches. Now, most of those matches haven't necessarily been against top flight competition, but it does seem like in the rankings, your strength of win isn't maybe necessarily as important as your record all the time, which is a tweak they could try but I understand, because let's be honest, in the NFL, your strength of record doesn't matter either. If you're 11 and 5 or 11 and 6, I guess now this next year, then you're 11 and 5, or you're 11 and 6, and you're seated where you're seated in the playoffs. It doesn't matter that your 11 wins all came against the Jacksonville Jaguars last year or something like that, which I realize isn't even possible, but I'm just trying to make my point. Poorly, but I'm trying to make my point. So they've done a nice job with Baker talking about her ascent. I was surprised when they said the top 2 contenders were Pac and Cassidy, and I'll be honest, I don't usually end up clicking on the links to look at the new rankings every Wednesday. Maybe that's my own fault. I've looked at them sometimes, but I don't. It's not a habit. If I click them, it's just because I'm like, oh, they're out. Okay, I'll look at them. I was like, those are the top 2 contenders. Okay.
All right, so I pulled them up. Orange Cassidy is 8-0 this year, and Pac is 5-0. So
for the record, before Wednesday night, QT Marshall 12-0,
and he's not even on the rankings, and he wasn't even on the rankings entering Wednesday night. Go figure. Yep. To your point about
QT Marshall in the pay-per-view main event either.
Right. Yeah, but to your point about Britt Baker kind of naming, I'm going to go everywhere and fight. So that's where Dark Elevation and AEW Dark are getting guys wins. Like I know, like this week, like Pac beat Serpentico as a good example, right? So his fifth win, I am presuming that was his fifth win, came by way of that. But unless you're the diehard AEW fans, and I'm not sure how many of those exist, I can't imagine you're watching 6 hours a week plus of AEW, especially when those other two shows, even though I know that some matches are like a minute or less.
The third member of
It's a lot. And the third member of Two Spot Monkeys is about to debut.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I was actually trying to look here quickly for so like Dark from this week has 218,000 views. Dark Elevation, I'm not finding it just as I look at it real fast. Oh, there it is.
Sure, but that's
4,000. Now again,
so that's maybe a fourth, a fifth, or a third of who's actually tuning in to watch Dynamite. So right. if you only have that segment of your audience,
and again, a view, we think, if I click on it, how long do I have to watch before it counts as a view? I don't think you have to watch the whole video by any means.
Right.
In fact, I know that for sure from our own podcasts here on YouTube. I see our number of views. I will say All Elite Wrestling kicking our tail as far as number of views goes. But I also can look at what's the average length somebody stays on our video. So if they click our video, do they watch the whole hour and a half, 2 hours last week of the video? And let me tell you, they're not on average. But I would bet when All Elite looks at their stats, they're not either. But still, they're getting 200 to 300,000 or more people to click on the video. So, but to your point, that's a quarter to a third of the million they pulled in on Wednesday night, which I don't know how you look at that. What's the goal? What do they consider? They must have considered Dark successful enough that they did Dark Elevation. I mean, that to me, that at least tracks.
And I think I saw a story or heard a rumor or read something at one point that those two entities, slices of the pie, are going to lead to something additional on TNT at some point, or maybe even
on a Turner network.
Maybe even TBS for that matter.
I still wonder, are they going to do something on HBO Max? But anyways, that's I wouldn't. If they did like again, not monthly, don't go monthly, but if they did every once in a while a Clash of the Champions style, now they do that with Dynamite where they have these big Blood and Guts and Winter is Coming and different ones. But if they did something like that on HBO Max, that might push me over the edge. I've considered HBO Max a number of different times because of the movies that are debuting there and things like that. I probably will eventually get it next year when I think it's Fire of the Dragon, if I remember right, the Game of Thrones prequel. When that debuts, I'll probably finally bite the bullet. But AEW could get me to do it before if they threw like a Clash of the Champions on there or something. They can't use that word, I know. But anyways, we're digressing all over.
Yeah. Well, we've spent a good chunk of this episode. It's been all AEW, and I'm not surprised. I knew that there was going to be a lot to talk about, and I think this has been a really rich conversation. And they're making their shows not recently in real time, like destination viewing. And again, had it not been for me having slept like a turd on Tuesday, I would have watched this all live Wednesday night. But I know my body and myself too well that I didn't want to watch this main event and this major match without my being able to dedicate and devote my full attention to it, and it paid off. So and next Wednesday too, again, stacked card. So I know we'll be back probably with AEW thoughts. If time and schedules allow for us to both watch them by next week. And I'm so grateful now that they're not competing with NXT. It has made my feelings about Wednesday night wrestling completely different, and Tuesday night wrestling for that matter too. Like, I don't feel like I have to choose a side anymore, which I'm thankful for. So I'm selfishly, as a fan, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, and I have to admit, again, I've said before, Tuesday and Wednesday nights I'm booked, so I can't watch either of them live. But lately, AEW has gotten, because it's usually at least Thursday before I get to watch either one of them. Sometimes I can start NXT on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, but not often. AEW has gotten the first click the last few weeks. And then I go back and watch NXT after. So kudos to AEW. They're doing something right because I also like the NXT product.
And they're not without fault. So let's not say that we're looking at it through rose-colored glasses. Yeah. I will say this. For probably only the second time in this calendar year in 2021, I completely bypassed Raw this Monday. I recorded it on my DVR, and then I thought, I haven't been enjoying this lately. I'm just not going to watch it. And I deleted it. I didn't watch a minute of Raw this week. I didn't watch a second of Raw this week.
It's sitting on my Sling DVR. I'll admit I haven't seen NXT yet, so it probably ain't happening.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I don't want to to not get too far ahead of ourselves. We have a pick'em for a WWE pay-per-view next week. I probably should kind of get in tune with what's been happening, and I am to a certain extent. But they're not motivating me as a viewer to want to tune in yet. So, but we're not here to talk WWE today. I just wanted to share that perspective just on the juxtaposition of my leaning toward AEW and the desire to want to tune in versus the non.
Right.
And I would say if there's any product out there, I don't care if you're a fast food restaurant, grocery store, pro wrestling on TV, if you're not getting folks to want to come in and walk in your doors or be a consumer of your product, something's up.
Right. Yep. So, absolutely. I will say that Raw did finally have somebody make their call up debut, and then they jobbed him out. So you built up on your social media. Not obviously never mentioned on Raw or anything that the guy Mansoor had won 49 straight matches. And so you bring him to Raw and you beat him.
Only to help or only to promote or build up Humberto Carrillo of all people. And again, nothing against him. Talented guy. But
right. I haven't seen it, so maybe it will play out better if I watch it. I don't know that that'll happen unless sometimes I will watch. I have found myself occasionally, not every single week, watching the This Week in WWE that Peacock or the network before it would have up because it'll at least hit those highlights for me. But yeah, I don't know. I digress. Different conversation. Maybe there'll be a point to talking about it next week as we preview WrestleMania Backlash because we can't just call it Backlash anymore. Let's move on to Ring of Honor. I know we've got some time constraints we want to make sure we hit this morning, but let's talk a little Ring of Honor. I'm a little behind on their TV. I know the results, but because I don't have access to it on the weekends anymore, it's Monday night before I have access through Fight, and then my week usually gets busy in NXT and AEW and that. So I'm behind on watching the show. I probably won't go back and watch all of them. But I would like to go back and watch this past week. Tom, you're up to date, I assume, on this past week.
Yes, I watched this past week. I believe I either forgot to record or just bypassed the week previous. I'm trying to go back and look quickly at results just to kind of refresh my memory. I know what happened over the course last week. Oh goodness. So for the week of the last week, so May 1st, the weekend of May 1, that was Flamita versus Bandito, the OGK versus Beer City Bruiser and Ken Dixon, who was kind of his new recruit, and then the ROH World TV title match where Tracy Williams made his first defense against Tony Deppen. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The show that preceded that, the last weekend of April, that was Dak Draper and Eli Isom, and then LFI versus Violence Unlimited in Violence Unlimited's in-ring kind of debut. I actually did watch that one. So going back to the week prior to that was the episode I missed. That was when they had Foundation versus Nexus Squad in the tag, which is kind of what led to that Flamita and Bandito match. Yeah. So going back to 2 weeks ago, 224 or 424 ish weekend. That was Draper, Isom, and LFI versus Violence. Did you see that or not?
I did see that one actually. So I guess I'm only 1 week behind. Yeah, I did see that one, and I guess to me, this story coming out of that, I mean, honestly, the main event was the main event. It was what I expected. A brawl that then the Foundation gets involved in. That's clearly the three-way faction warfare they're doing right now. Dalton Castle's character turn was
interesting. Yeah, interesting. I would agree with that statement. I would say Draper Isom were heel face in that match, and coming out of it, and Draper can still be a heel, but I would think both men have now an issue with Dalton Castle, and Dalton Castle clearly positioned himself as a heel. So,
but yeah, you kick people in the ding ding, and that's going to make you a heel. That's wrestling 101. I guess unless you're Steve Austin or somebody, but Kevin Owens maybe. But and then that's not where they're kicking. I realized for the stunner that wasn't what I meant by that, but maybe
technical terminology on Two Spot Monkeys Live.
That's right. Look, at Dalton Castle at one point, I was really kind of into that character, and I haven't been for quite a long time. And I know he's been battling injuries and things like that. So his in-ring work was rough. I mean, even even during his title run, which, gosh, it seems, the fact that I can say Dalton Castle, former Ring of Honor World Champion, just now seems odd and weird. Although at the time it was totally the right move to make. It felt like from a storyline perspective. Now I look at him and I go, that guy was champ, really? Okay. They're trying something new with him, which kudos, because I don't think the Peacock thing was going anywhere anymore. And do they want to say the word Peacock 900 times now when that's where WWE lives? Okay. But to me, that was kind of the news coming out of that, because to me, the main event, well, fine, was exactly what I expected out of it.
Yeah, and it's, you're not going to get any resolution there,
right,
until down the road. I did think it was interesting to not have Violence Unlimited win via DQ and have LFI win via DQ. You would think that you would want like the newer faction to come out a little bit stronger. And then correct me if I'm wrong. Did I hear you say, even though you didn't watch last weekend, are you up to date on what happened?
Yes.
Okay, so then transition. Tony Deppen does defeat Tracy Williams to become the Ring of Honor World Television Champion, which I think a lot of people kind of were thinking that it could happen. I don't know that I thought it happening this soon is what I materialized, or how it materialized. I would have much, I think, rather had the tag titles go to Violence versus this, only because of my fandom for Tracy Williams. But I also don't know, who are the two guys that you would have picked out of Violence Unlimited to be a tag team, because they haven't really established that yet.
No, they haven't. From the way they debuted, it looked like it could have been Dickinson and Homicide, and that would make some sense, because it might be a good way to get to the ROH fans who don't know who Chris Dickinson is. You and I are both familiar with Chris Dickinson, obviously, from Evolve and other places. That might be a good way to get Dickinson over to them, because, again, you're going to have Ring of Honor fans at this point who don't know who Homicide is either. But if you're at least familiar with the history of Ring of Honor, Homicide is much more known to Ring of Honor fans than Dickinson might be. Although there was a time in the world where Ring of Honor fans were also the fans who knew everybody everywhere. I don't know that that's totally the case for every Ring of Honor fan anymore, as it once maybe. Even then, it wasn't all Ring of Honor fans, but it seemed like more of us. And I put you and I in that category because we were a part of that. I like Tony Deppen, so I'm good with it. I agree with you. I thought the tag belts would have switched first, because I do feel like the tag and TV belts have played a little hot potato lately. And at some point you want that to simmer down, but I guess that's part of the faction warfare. They're all fighting for the titles and they kind of switch them between factions and whatever. And yet you still have Shane Taylor Promotions sitting over here as the 6-man tag champs, which those would be the belts you think would end up in one of these factions. I don't know. They're just kind of the forgotten children in this, I feel like, in the faction warfare.
And they really haven't put a spotlight on either Shane Taylor or his group since.
Makes me wonder if Shane's hurt or something.
The anniversary show.
odd.
Yeah, that is Yeah. Well, it was a good match. I am not in the camp that you are on Tony Deppen yet. I'm not totally opposed to him. He's just something's not clicking. And it's not the early Sammy Guevara type not clicking. It's different. just to draw that line out. But this is worth going out of your way to see. Violence Unlimited did not interfere leading to the finish. It was a clean finish,
which I like.
Yeah, Williams just got, which for someone who's priding himself on pure wrestling and being really technical, it proved that sometimes you get stuck or you get pinned. It's also worth going out of your way to watch Flamita versus Bandito on this show as well.
Big fan of both of those guys, and that will be when I get a chance to watch it, and I will go back to see this one. That the title change certainly will make me want to see it, but Bandito and Flamita, yep, sign me up. I'm in. I've said hashtag free Bandito on this podcast. I don't know how many times. I'm a big fan of Bandito, and I like Flamita a whole lot too. And I'm interested to see. We haven't seen now. Obviously, it happens in Lucha Libre all the time, but in main WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, those kinds of organizations, we haven't seen a lot of really strong heel masked characters like Flamita. And I'm not saying he's a really strong heel yet, but it would be interesting to see if they can get him there. And what does that look like in American wrestling? I just think that could be very interesting. And I like that we're not just going, oh, the Lucha guys do flips, so they're all faces, which I feel is kind of how they get booked sometimes. Lucha House Party, hello. Although we tried to make Kalisto a heel, and look, then we didn't do anything with him. And now he got it released. Okay. So I think it'll be interesting, and obviously that wasn't Ring of Honor, but I'm interested to see that. And again, give me Bandito on the show every week. That's fine with me. Interested to see where Ring of Honor goes, and I'm really looking forward to this weekend show, which again I won't be able to see until next Monday at least. The Quinn McKay Angelina Love match. I haven't watched their Women Wednesday stuff on YouTube, but I've been keeping up on it. And I like that they're having a match each week. And then the next week, kind of whoever wins that match, or the first week it was a tag match, so it was one person from that tag match. Maria Kanellis is giving a spot in the tournament too. So I like that they're doing, like getting a spot in the tournament, you're kind of having to earn it for the most part. Angelina Love got a spot already. She may get a first round bye if she beats Quinn McKay, but Quinn McKay will get a spot in the tournament if she beats Angelina Love. You got these Women Wednesday matches. Sumi Sakai just beat Vita Von Star. I would have had Vita go over and put Vita. I think you could have helped build Vita Von Star, but sorry if you're planning to watch those spoiler free, and now I just ruined it for you, Tom. But
all good. Yeah. And they've stated that match, Love and McKay, is the main event this weekend.
Yes.
So that's a pretty big deal when you consider that you've got the Briscoes and EC3 and Flip and a tag match, and there's one other singles, I believe, as well. So that's a big deal. One other thing
it is a big deal, but let me tell you, I'll take Quinn McKay in my main event over Flip Gordon any time of the day.
That was low-hanging fruit. I threw you a softball there. Did you hear the news about Lenny Leonard coming back to Ring of Honor?
I did. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I am as well.
Obviously he and Larry Dallas had been doing the Dragon Gate shows before the pandemic, and because of the pandemic, they hadn't been able to, although it's been curious to me that they had, so far, it doesn't seem like they've done the American commentary from this side during the show like Kevin Kelly had been doing, although Kelly was headed back to Japan to call. I don't know if he called. Do they have live English commentary on the shows earlier this week, Tom?
They did not, but I believe he was in Japan and he was quarantining because the commentary on by the time I watched the Monday event on Tuesday, he had already dubbed the commentary after the fact, and he had alluded to he'd be doing live the rest of the month or into June. So
yeah, I knew he was going to be at the two stadium shows that now have been postponed, but. So Dragon Gate apparently hasn't chosen to do that for whatever reason, and that's their thing. I like Lenny Leonard, a big fan of Lenny Leonard. So him coming in, I think it'll be interesting to see, is he the lead, which would make sense to me for the women's tournament. It also tells me though that the women's tournament likely is not going to be on TV. It's going to be on YouTube, which I don't love if that's the case.
Yeah.
I think they need to give them the spots on the TV show, or at least most of it. I just don't think putting the women on YouTube exclusively shines the right light on them. I think it makes them seem less than. And AEW did the same thing with their Eliminator tournament. I felt the same way about that.
Yeah.
But just on the Lenny Leonard front, very happy to see him back in Ring of Honor. I think that he's criminally underrated as a play-by-play guy, and excited to see him do his work.
Absolutely. Well, we are up against our time constraints today. It goes without saying this is Mother's Day weekend, or we're entering Mother's Day weekend. So we were going to do, not that there's any correlation between the topic of, either a Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling and or top 5 women's performers, but an ode to the female trendsetters. That's kind of where I was headed with that topic. We'll have to table that and come back either way.
Are we just doing exactly what we just threw Ring of Honor and AEW under the bus for? We're having to move the women off of the main show. But we will get to that. We will.
Good call, and we look like a bunch of tools now. We're the tool spot monkeys. So I digress. I'm not sure if mothers are our demographic at all, but happy Mother's Day to anyone who's a mom and who's listening or who has fulfilled that mom role. And for our moms, thanks for having these 2 spot monkeys so we can do this and have fun almost every week.
Absolutely. And I don't know about yours, but I know my mom's not listening, but happy Mother's Day anyways.
My mom did, there's a funny story that my mom once called and checked into my brother. I think when the Ultimate Warrior passed away, she saw it on I don't know, the Today Show or whatever. And she was like, "Are you okay? The Ultimate Warrior passed away. I'm so sorry." Not the condolences you'd think you'd ever get from your mom, and also not maybe the talent. I digress. It doesn't matter. It just sticks out there.
Kind of your mom, though. Very kind of your mom.
Yeah, the sentiment was not lost.
But yes, absolutely. Happy Mother's Day to anybody who's fulfilled that role, and I think that was a great way to say that, Tom, because we know lots of women who have been moms to people, even if they did not give birth, and lots of men who have been dads, even if they didn't help biologically create that child. So whatever role you fill in that mom universe, thanks for doing it. Our kids need it. So happy Mother's Day. And we will talk about the women again. And we'll be back next week with WrestleMania Backlash and so much more. Thanks for being here, everybody. Everybody stay safe. Enjoy. Hopefully it's beautiful where you are. It's supposed to be, I think, nice here today. But enjoy the weather, and we'll talk with you soon next week.